Travis was a good song. Since the 1950s, until the 1993 incident with September 6, Mormons love to go attend firesides by Mormon intellectuals. Mormons love to learn all kinds of things from them. And sort of to this day, Mormon apologists still cling to Hugh Nibley as the whole collection of Nibley is a major focal point for them. But now, since September 6th, church has done away with intellectualism in the church. You're no longer allowed to gain intelligence. You have to gain a spiritual witness. As Mormons are no longer allowed to produce the fruits of the Word. You have to feel good about the Word, and now you know the truth. And the church demands that you just accept the Word that they give you. Believe it. Nonetheless, there's still been the scandal after 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 scandal, and it still continues to this day with the New Saints volumes. They're continually lying to us about church history. They refuse to tell us the truth. And so in section 86, Joseph Smith is prophesying to Mormons. And the church, if you look in the footnotes, is covering it up and hiding it from you. They'll say he's a prophet. They'll say he's a seer. They'll say he's a revelator. They'll say he's a translator. But that's not what they mean. So, verily thus saith the Lord unto you, my servants. Those are the missionaries. He's going to talk about you. Concerning the parable of the wheat and the tares. Didn't I just do that last week? And this camera is off center. It's bugging me. Behold, verily I say, the field was the world, and the apostles were the sowers of the seed. This was December 6th, not too far off from the date, 1832. Joseph Smith just barely begun with his missionaries, and here he is saying, thus saith the Lord unto you, my servants. He is talking about the apostles who were the elders of the church. In 1835, this is when he officially forms the Quorum of 12 Apostles with Thomas B. Marsh as the president. So that was still another 3 years away. And so he's taking the parable of the wheat and the tares, which was written by Jews, which is written in the manner of prophecy and revelation, not literal history. And so his apostles, servants, are the sowers of the seed. What seed? The Book of Mormon, which is in the learning of the Jews, not Constantine's first creed of Christianity, Jesus. It is not another testament of Jesus Christ. It is Jewish. Doctrine and Covenants, section 3, verse 16, says the Book of Mormon talks about the Jewish Christ. For Mormons, because it also says Joseph Smith is the founding Christ to prepare the way for the coming of the Mormon Christ. This is the seed that is to be planted in the world. Joseph Smith is saying we are now starting to fulfill this prophecy from the New Testament about the parable of the wheat and the tares. Mormons shouldn't be getting upset with me, even though they want to, because I'm not being faith promoting. Just not faith promoting for Brigham. This is what Mormons cannot comprehend. I am all in on Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as Jewish, just like it says, not Brigham Young, the enemy, whom Joseph Smith prophesies about. After they had fallen asleep, the great persecutor of the church, the apostate, the whore, even Babylon, that maketh all nations to drink of her cup, in whose hearts the enemy, even Satan, sitteth to reign. Is Joseph Smith a prophet? Mormons? Hello? Where are you? Did you run away already to put your thumbs down and hate comment and death threat and then hide? Behold, the sower, he soweth the tares. Joseph Smith is prophesying that among his apostles will come an apostate to persecute the church, to be a whore, sexual, and then to seek to reign over the whole world. And he and his missionaries in Joseph's church as a secret combination will sow tares throughout the world among the wheat by Joseph Smith and his lambs. There are saved 2 churches, remember? And so the tares choke the wheat and drive Joseph's church into the deseret of the Salt Lake Valley. Is Joseph Smith a prophet? Those of you who are ex-fo and nevermos, oops, somebody made a boo-boo in interpreting the church. Nobody ever listens to me. Okay? So let's go back in history to the origins of man. And then they migrated up into the Nile Valley to become the Egyptians. I'll get this next passage set for you. The Egyptians were big on temple rituals. They founded it. They founded religion. It was all based on them. So that as mankind continued to migrate out of Egypt around the whole world, they took with them their interpretation of the Egyptian religion, and it got changed according to their cultural conditions and their language. And so they would continue to tell the scriptural prophecies and revelations of the latter days, but it would be through this alternate cultural, linguistic change that had taken place upon them. And so, same with the rituals of the temple. So the Egyptians, in regards to the rituals concerning kingship, was based upon the prophecies of the origins of the theology, in which you have Atom created from Nun. And if you're going to try to fix it into one translation, you're going to fail. But nonetheless, Atom then gives birth or creates Shu and Tefnut. Shu is the air, Tefnut is the moisture, and then you have them as brother and sister conceiving Nut and Geb. Nut is the heavens, Geb is the earth. And brother and sister are in love, just like mommy and daddy were. But Atom doesn't like this. He allowed it for his children, but not for his grandchildren. And so he orders Shu to separate them. And so he does, but oops, she's pregnant. Too late. Too late. And so this separation is in Genesis chapter 1, the creation of heaven and earth. And don't fix it into one translation. You will fail. And so the Egyptian pharaohs, kings, they were called pharaohs since the 18th dynasty, they would follow this practice of securing the dynasty's bloodline with every single pharaoh being married to his sister. And thus, the more birthright blessing sister, the better. But to secure the dynasty, they had other sisters in ranked order for marriage. Just like 4 sons, just in case somebody dies or somebody becomes wicked, so on and so forth. But nonetheless, birthright blessing is involved in all of this. And so you see this being taught to us by Joseph Smith in the book of Abraham, chapter 1, the blood of the Canaanites. Joseph is correct. The Egyptian pharaohs had the blood of the Canaanites. Zawi Hawass was infuriated with the DNA results, demanded that science be overthrown, and covered up and hidden. Why did you let science. And so, yes, do not go against Joseph. Do not apologize for Joseph, because you're apologizing for Brigham Young, who lied about Joseph. He's the sower of the tares. We're getting to it. We'll try to summarize it as quick as I can. And so, the coronation ceremony of pharaohs took place within the temple. And as with the funeral procession for the late king, likewise, there was a similar one for the coronation of the new king that took over. There was the washing and anointings and the coronation with the marriage ceremony at the same time, all on the same process. This was the rituals that goes all the way back to the birth of Nut and Geb with their children of Osiris, the first king of Egypt. As the one particular list of kings has Osiris as listed as the first king of Egypt. I don't think I still have those on my file here. Maybe. No, I don't. Okay. Too bad. So sad. All right. So brother and sister get married in the temple, and they then proceed to the Holy of Holies in the temple, where there would be hymns played and sacrifice before the gods, where a portion of that sacrifice would be given to those who offered the sacrifice, which in this case would be Pharaoh and his new wife, the new Pharaoh and his new wife. And thus where we get the sacrament of the Last Supper. That's where the symbolism comes from for the coming of the Christ. It was the Egyptian Christ who is to come, Horus. Because it is Osiris, the first king, who is murdered by his brother, Set. Thus in Paleo-Hebrew, Set, with the N at the end, is King Set. Satan, the adversary. And so the story goes, gathering to Zion and the birth of Horus, impregnating the wife, Isis, as she has to flee into the wilderness to hide from Set, who wants to murder her, to prevent the child from being born, to be a threat to his throne that he usurped, ruling over the whole world. That's where the parable of the wheat and tares comes from. That's where Joseph Smith is talking about. He is talking about his church being the fulfillment of all prophecy. Prophecy fulfilled. Okay, and then Pharaoh and the new wife would then consummate their marriage within the Holy of Holies, or in a room adjacent to it. That's where it originates from. So, as people migrated out into Mesopotamia, they carried this tradition. The Assyrians into the Babylonians would make it more of a public display, which the Egyptians did have those. A parade procession. They would utilize the Nile for it, so that everybody can gather along the banks of the Nile and watch the barks travel up the Nile with the king and the queen, to the temple, and then a parade procession on the ramp leading to the temple, into the temple. And Mesopotamia, Assyria, and Babylon, with their also centuries of tradition, would have this similar process. Well, not too many centuries. It was only 100 years from New Assyria to Babylon. But nonetheless, they too would have a procession through the capital city of the king and the high priest's daughter to the temple, where they would then be sealed, the coronation of the new king, and sex in the Holy of the Holies of the temple. And so, turning into historical context for the Jewish Bible stories of prophecy and revelation, the Assyrians, New Assyrians, came in and conquered northern Israel. And they deported back and forth. They took Assyrians from a particular city or cities and transplanted them into northern Israel, and took the northern Israelites, who were the wheat rather than the poor quality barley of the poor people, and transplanted them back into those towns in Assyria, so that they would be assimilated into Assyria more effectively, as they believed. Thus live among the Assyrians, trade among the Assyrians, wear the outward appearance of the Assyrians, use the outward appearance of the Assyrians, and assimilate. We are Borg. It was somewhat peaceful, despite the being taken from your land and put somewhere else. It's the Babylonians, however, that were the whores. That's why Babylon is compared to a whore by Revelation's author, as well as Joseph Smith in the Book of Mormon, using this for the prophetic example. Because theirs was a conquer by destruction, kidnapping, rape, burning, pillaging, plundering, and holding the Jews hostage from Judah in Babylon, and thus raping the women to give birth to a Babylonian Jewish hybrid. Babylonians were the first ones to understand the breeding process in order to get a pure white sheep, for example. They found that if they bred two pure white sheeps, that produced only pure white sheeps. Whereas if you take a spotted sheep, there will always be the spotted babies. And so, yeah, they were utilizing this breeding process, but breeding with the Jews. And so the Jews, despite the Roman period scribes prophesying of the latter days, but using the Babylonian context, like the book of Daniel, to talk about how the Jews remained pure and holy and wholesome, separate, distinct from the Babylonian culture. They were not. They were assimilated. They adopted everything from the Babylonians. And despite this, when they went back to Jerusalem under Cyrus, king of Persia, they became racist bigots towards the mixed race of Assyrians and northern Israelites called Samaritans. Again, beam and moat in full effect, as the Jews were not as pure as they claimed to be. But the new Jews who took over Jerusalem, this is where the pure Jewish master race comes from, but they were Babylonian. And so when writing Genesis, for example, the author is taking this new Judah Jewish belief that they came from Babylon, and therefore the Abrahamic tradition that Jews are Semites. No, they were pre-Babylonian captivity Egyptians, just like the Book of Mormon says it is. Nevertheless, it's used for prophecy now, as Jews, after Christianity, turning at literal history, therefore created the tradition from Constantine's First Creed, which is all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Nevertheless. And so then after the Persians, who likewise had a similar Mesopotamian marriage structure, but not into the raping of the women like Babylon was. You get the Greeks who enter into the picture. Alexander the Great does a massive campaign of conquering land, subjecting everybody to him. And eventually you would get Egypt involved when you get to Cleopatra. She betrays the Egyptians and then does the suicide thing. But nonetheless, the Greeks take over the Jewish temple. And as I've been going over with you lately, because of inspiration, to warn you, you don't listen, you don't believe, Mormons are angry that they're prostituted and sex trafficked. Can't be true. Church is true. It's celestial kingdom marriage. No. That's the pretty picture I've got for you. Mormons live in denial and they alter definitions to make it all true. Just like Christianity did with the First Creed. You are not understanding what a tear is. And so the Greeks began the practice of prostitution. Not just the offering of different meats on the altar. You can be a big pig too. Which the Jews would refer to as the abomination of desolation. The offering on the altar of foreign occupiers' rituals in the temple. Their temple has been taken over and used by a foreign government, by a foreign religion. Again, Joseph Smith prophesied that, section 58, just read it. Do you not believe him? You in denial? I should go back and read to you the footnotes. For 3C, under tares. So let me read that for you again. And after they have fallen asleep, the great persecutor of the church. Now, if you remember falling asleep, this is when Jesus goes to the Mount of Transfiguration, in which the Peter, James, and John fall asleep while he receives the keys for the latter-day Messiah. Messiah ben Joseph, Messiah ben David. Think Jewish, do not think Christian. It's not literal history. So this is what Joseph Smith is referring to here. That as Joseph Smith is receiving the keys and getting the church set up, getting the temple set up for the rituals, the apostles are sleeping on the job. They're not understanding the bigger picture of what's going on. That's what Joseph Smith is referring to. And then persecutor of the church, the apostate, the whore, even Babylon, that maketh all nations to drink of her cup, in whose hearts the enemy, even Satan, sitteth to reign. Behold, he soweth the tares. And the tares choke the wheat and drive the church into the wilderness. Section 86, verse 3, footnote C. T.G. apostasy of the early Christian church. Babylon was already destroyed before that, Bruce Armaconkey. What are you doing? Because for B on Babylon, they put Revelation 17:5, parentheses 1 through 9, and T.G. Babylon. Babylon's destroyed. What are you doing? They were purposely doing these footnotes to lead you astray from the truth, presenting it as helping you study. And then September 6th happened, and this church wants nothing to do with the footnotes anymore, and so now you use your cell phones or the internet site, and they purposely, you have to go through hoops to see the footnotes. They're trying to cover them up and hide them from you. And even with the new Spanish editions, you're welcome what I was allowed to get away with. Correct. And so, yeah, these kinds of things that are the fruits of corruption, that the church can't be true. If they can't tell you the truth, and you get Mormons who just say the church is true at all costs, and become these tares to choke the wheat. And dear God, they choked me for years, and they still won't let go. But I'm still standing after all this time, picking up the pieces of my life without you on my mind. I'm still standing, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyway, the Greeks. There are not only offering their religion in the Jewish temple now with pig bacon, Which is interesting how Peter says it's okay for bacon to be offered on the temple now that it's been almost destroyed, which is interesting because it's after the temple was destroyed that it was written, and it's not literal history. But that's another story. Another video. As he's not the leader of the church, Jacob is. And so during the Greek period, you have a number of women who are widowed or are not married. And because of the Babylonians specifically, women were not allowed to own property, to run a business generally. I'm sure you can find an example, and thus, oh, there it is, the one token example proves it all true. You know, like the black female who was not a slave, who was a billionaire or something like that. You know, like Oprah. That's a token example that doesn't disprove that slavery existed in America. You get these dumbasses who are just full-on racist bigots to use these small sampling or one token example to try to disprove the general practice. And under Obama, that one dumbass got sent to prison for it. Did a video. I was introduced to it by my neighbor who tried to justify that blacks weren't really treated poorly as slaves. What? What are you talking about? This does not prove it. I mean, that's great for the one woman, but what was she doing? She had black slaves too. Anyway, not going into that video discussion. And so women, to be taken care of under the Greeks, they devised a way to provide for them temple service. And so thus the Greek practice of the temple, taken from the ancient order of having sex with the creation for the coming of the Christ, was incorporated in the rituals of the Greeks, but now it was turned into the general population practice, where men can pay with their offerings, their tithing, and reenact the creation of mankind, as well as the conception of the future Christ who was to come in the future through this Last Supper ritual offering in the temple of the Holy of Holies. And so they had a separate room set aside for that practice rather than in the Holy of Holies, because it was quite popular. The practice, however, was such that a young man who would worship in the temple of the Greeks and get a woman pregnant in the temple, the child being born and raised in the temple, the girls would also grow up to be temple prostitutes. This is where prostitute comes from, is because when the women were not working, they were outside of the temple by the carved-in stone temple, and they would have the pillars of the women. I should have that picture. Don't Don't you? Don't you? Okay, it's not there, but it better be here. Yep, there's one temple. I don't think. Yeah, they just have the pillars. There's the carved features up at the top that would have deities up there, but the other one, which I probably should put sister missionaries in front of this one for you. Here it is. Here it is. So let's get this one going. Even though you can see it better with that one, but the other one is a fuller picture. We'll get it set up so that I don't forget. I notice we're at 42 minutes. So yeah, the columns are actually carved into women, the goddesses. Okay, so leave that alone. And okay, get to it later. Put it in the picture for you, but I won't do the thumbnail. The Babylonian one is the thumbnail, not the Greek one. And so a prostitute is where we get the word porn from Greek. Porn is prostitute. Prostitute is before the statue, the carving in stone. And so prostrate means to kneel or bow before. So you prostrate yourselves before deity, you prostrate yourselves before a king, etc. Bow before. Thus, prostitute is before a carving in stone. And so the women who were temple workers, when they weren't working, would hang out front so that any men who pass by, hey, want to come in and worship today? How much money you got? So what do you do for a living? Blink, blink, innocent, innocent. Right? Mormon singles in the singles ward. What? I'm just asking. It's just small talk. No, it's not. No, it's not. Don't lie to me. I know what you're up to. If you really wanted to get to know a guy, there are other ways to get to know a guy's mind and heart, rather than his pocketbook or his wallet. What's in your wallet? When I was submitting files at the federal courthouse, and I have to undress to put everything in the box, they had my wallet in there, and they were scanning my wallet, and I was talking about asking if the x-rays were able to see inside my wallet, which was specifically lined to prevent scanned credit card scammers. And they were able to still view inside with the x-ray machine. And so they were saying, no, it doesn't harm or anything like that, and trying to calm me down. But nonetheless, I make the joke from the commercial about the credit card company, or the whatever commercial it was. What's in your wallet? Two of the guys got it. Nonetheless, then all hell broke loose as Oak said that was just a test run for Jesus in 2024. So, the women are now called prostitutes because they're before the statues to try to solicit men to pay to worship in the temple, and thus how they would get paid. If they didn't bring food and drink offerings for the women to be fed, the money would then be used to go to the market to purchase food and drink and such. And so they would have rooms set aside in the temple for them to live in as well, in case that was confusing for you. And so that's why you see all these different Bible stories, as I finally did sort of get to go over the rape of somebody as a pattern for all of the scriptures. Because there's Pharaoh raping, it was Rebecca, wasn't it? I think so. That I wanted to do for you, because that pattern is common, and when you turn it literal history, you think it's a duplication of a historical event. No! Dumbass scholars who are not scholars. Prophecy, revelation. Notice the patterns. And so yes, Mary, the mother of Jesus, is a temple worker in those Gnostic Gospels that were not approved by the Roman Emperor Constantine Church when they combined scriptures to create the Bible, calling it the Old and New Testaments. No, don't do that. And so, yeah, like that same thing. Joseph goes to buy her at the temple for his orphan children. Not really orphan, because he's their dad. Their mom died, according to the story. And so he goes to the temple to buy a wife, expecting her to be a virgin. But it's Jesus, so it's okay. Prophecy and revelation. It's coming. It's coming. I set it up for you in the beginning. It's coming. You all know it's coming. You chose to run away and hide. And so, yes, the Jerusalem temple was no longer doing that practice. The Gnostics were not giving literal history. They were prophesying. Because the Maccabean revolt is what changed to restore the temple back to the Jews. So when the Romans took over, the Romans didn't do what the Greeks did. They let the Jews have their temple with their religious rituals in it, still maintained. But the Romans put their soldiers round about the walls, which the Jews were not comfortable with. And thus many revolts occurred during the Roman period of time that the Romans finally said, enough is enough, let's destroy them. And thus the second temple was destroyed by the Romans, both on 9th Ave. And so it's important to remind you of the origins of Islam coming from Babylon after Persia destroyed them. And then Rome would go on to produce the Christians under Constantine. It was not the Jews who produced Christians through the natural process. Oh, the Jews were prophesying about Jesus. It's all literal history because the first creed says it is. No. Stop it. Quit being all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Joseph Smith History, verse 19. You gotta trust Joseph, guys. You know, nobody does. Not Mormons, not ex-foes. Nobody trusts them. Why? But during the Roman period time, I forgot, I got sidetracked. So you have young men who have sex, woman gets pregnant, has babies, daughter grows up, 20 years, 14 years later, 15 years later, that girl is old enough to be prostituted herself, and here comes daddy back to the temple. He doesn't know. Then have sex with his daughter under the Greek practice, which carried over into the Roman practice. And so you have Romans who are trying to tease and mock these Gnostics who are performing washing and anointing rituals as brothers and sisters. And they respond back to the Romans, well, you're having sex with your daughters. Oh my God. Hilarity ensues with all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Hilarious. So yes, Christians were not slaughtered in the Colosseum because Christians hadn't been created yet. If they were called Christians, as the letters of Paul talk about Christians, or Peter, or whoever it is, it is understood in the concept of those who follow the practices of the future coming of a Christ, not the one whose literal history, who's already come but didn't come and failed to save the Jews, but gets a second chance for the latter days that now no man knows the day or the hour of. Anyway, and so this is where the horror of Babylon comes from these guys. They can't really talk directly about the Roman Empire because the Roman Empire would get upset and come and destroy the documents. So they use Babylon. They use the Greeks to avoid getting the records destroyed during the Roman period of time. You know, like forging a document and saying it's by Joseph Smith, so that the government won't destroy that revelation from Jesus. He sowed tares. What did you think he was doing? All right. And so then Christianity forbids sex and says that sex is evil, even though it's the first commandment in their chronologically ordered Jewish usurped scriptures, and then forbid nudity and porn by evangelicals after 1900's failure to have the Christianized Jewish scriptures taught in the public school systems. Oops, hey, they're back and in full-on rage. Isn't that interesting? Not a coincidence. This is the war. Right, Oaks? Just 2 more years till the anniversary of the Illuminati. 2 more. Trump is already preparing for it. So is the church. Are you gonna get the temple at least finished this time? No? Okay. I'd hate to have your God. He must be furious with you, Nelson. Your Lord and Master without a temple. He must be furious. So, yeah, Christianity engulfs the world along with Islam. Babylon and Rome together for all these years, centuries. And so Joseph Smith starts up the church. Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball join. They're of the Illuminati. Did the Illuminati video. It was like 3 hours, wasn't it? This is not going to be 3 hours. I'm now in our time period. We're done. This is almost it. Don't worry. You shouldn't, because you know the time on the full video now. Whatever it's going to be. And they adopted the practices of this Illuminati group in America, which came from Europe. There were many who were a part of this new underground sex cult of the Dionysian Roman order. Dionysus was a deity, and if you've heard about him being similar to Jesus, you're not too far off, because they're all prophecies and revelations of the future. And so there's alcohol involved in order for your drunken stupor to give you revelation from, or inspiration from God. And this is where the Noah getting drunk and found naked in the tent by Ham, and then Noah then curses Canaan instead of Ham for seeing him naked. And nobody understands what that means unless you trust Joseph Smith. Nobody does this. Why? Right there. Abraham, chapter 1. Blood of the Canaanites to preserve the dynasty. Thus, brother and sister. Thus, the first Pharaoh has to marry Egyptus, the daughter of Ham and Egyptus. Hello? That's who they're talking about. Canaan, who is cursed by Noah for having sex and getting sealed by Noah in his drunken state. This fits also the pattern of Lot. After his wife stays in the Great Salt Lake to become a pillar of the Great Salt Lake. Prophecy fulfilled in the coming day. So the daughters get him drunk and rape him. Hey, Daddy, we've raped you. We're pregnant. That's where all this comes from, is the Dionysian order, rituals in the temples, and orgy sex and all that stuff. Rome also instituted, because I didn't mention it, did I? Not in this video anyway, that men now are joined in the temple worship. And so you get Samuel, whose mother dedicates her son to the temple. That's Roman period document. And you'll also notice that Eli's sons are having sex in the wrong room of the temple, and so God is mad and murders the two sons and Eli, so that Samuel now becomes the temple president. Name of God. Hilarious story if you understand Hebrew. You've got the name of God, you've got the sons of God, and the voice of God. Remember that? That was weird. All Feast of Tabernacles, I'm up at 1 in the morning. So yes, on the 4th morning, I do the video for you on this subject. You don't catch on. You never believe. You don't listen. And it's coming. The field is white. Supremacist, all ready to be burned with the Holocaust. Okay? And so, Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball are involved in raping women on their missions. Numerous reporting of this, even when Brigham went to England. This was the practice of what became the Danites, the ones that Brigham and Heber first converted. They were the ones that attempted to infiltrate America, and William Morgan found out about it and was working with Joseph Smith Sr. at his Freemason Lodge, where he was the Master Mason, in Canandaigua, New York. And that's why we have the Book of Mormon today and the missing 116 pages. Excuse me. And so, being pissed with whoever was responsible for rescuing William Morgan, secreting him out of the country, and having possession of those 116 pages, they wanted revenge. That's why the need for secrecy and having Sidney Rigdon write it out in Ohio with Oliver Cowdery as the scribe. Well, Joseph is the one who's going to be set up to be Messiah ben Joseph, and so he needs to be on the forefront as the diversionary tactic away from the actual book getting published. And so Martin Harris had the money. Joseph Smith knew him. He worked on the farm with him, knew that he would have the money to purchase the Book of Mormon. And since Joseph had played the little game with the rocks in the hat from the rocks he found in the well that he dug for Martin Harris, Martin Harris was dumb enough to believe in that superstitious crap. Right, Oaks? I know you're not a direct descendant, but the sister is of the same blood. And yet Oaks thinks he knows better because he knows, and won't go there. Right, Oaks? We'll save it for when you're president. If you become president. If. And so thus, Martin Harris, wanting to be a part of it, caused some problems. And so thus the need to create a setting for Martin Harris to believe. And thus why he's the only source for the Rock in the Hat. No, Smith Sr. was not making money off of it. Even that apologist knew that. But he still didn't understand about Jewish Kabbalah from the New Israelites, let alone his master masonry of the York Rites. But yeah, that's what it means to be a Mormon apologist. Leave out key factual information. Because church has to be true at all costs. So, yeah, Brigham and Heber followed the Illuminati pattern of infiltrating, rising up in number, rising up in rank, taking over positions of authority with a coup, and then destroying it, burning it to the ground, and then starting up from the ashes with the New World Order. Brigham been there, done that, and here we are. And so the prophecy of the Christ is that he comes through the great and abominable church. Through the process of sex. And so Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball and their Danites were involved in these New World, New America, secret combinations, sex orgies from the Dionysian order. And depending on which secret order you were a part of, depending on how it was done, whether it was just a gangbang orgy fest, or whether Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise and Nicole Kidman, or the Spectre secret combination group, in which you'd have one woman offered up to be gangbanged by the other men in the group. This is this Danite Illuminati that are the secret combination within Joseph Smith's church, and that's the horrifying video that I did for you going over the Nicolaitan band in section 117 verse 11, because the Danites were threatening the wheat Mormons that Joseph Smith was the leader of this Danite band, that Joseph Smith had changed the name of the church to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and you need to join in this war against Americans, or you're an apostate, anti-Mormon, anti-Christ Korihor, because Thomas B. Marsh in his affidavit said that the Danites called themselves true Mormons. That's Danites. They were the true Mormons. They were the faithful Mormons, claiming that Joseph Smith is their leader. When Joseph Smith got locked up in Liberty Jail in 1838, while Brigham Young then became president. And so, yeah, it's what these guys were doing. They were doing the Babylonian style practice. Raping, pillaging, plundering, burning to the ground. And so section 117 exposes this. This is a forged document. Now pay attention to what they, oops, Joseph Smith is speaking to Newell K. Whitney. Let my servant Newell K. Whitney be ashamed of the Nicolaitan band. That's code. Bruce Armour Conkey did not decode it. Why, Bruce? The church says they got it all decoded. Oops. Babylon in section 1 verse 16 also got missed, Bruce. Isn't it America, Bruce? Why didn't you put America? Should we do that? I don't want to get off of this. And of all their secret abominations. It comes from Revelation chapter 2, verse 6 and 15. That's where it's mentioned. And that's what they're using here. Now, we don't know the real history of this band talked about in Revelation chapter 2. But the tradition from Christianity was that this Nicolaitan band involved sex orgies, swapping wives, passing them all around. So you've got Newell K. Whitney being a part of the Nicolaitan band of swapping wives around. Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball were already going around having sex with other men's wives, converting them to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Heber C. Kimball, in case you didn't know, because you're not a part of a branch off of the family line, knocked up a woman in 1829, had a kid with her. And so he joins the church already a polygamist. Shh, don't tell. So yes, these guys were pure evil, joining the church for the sole purpose to destroy it, because they want revenge for what Joseph Smith Sr. saved America for on 9/11/1826. And so this is what the Danites were doing. They were going around converting people to the church. Oh, your husband's not at home? Let's have sex. Who's she going to tell? Women don't have rights. And so when the man does get home, she can't tell. It's got to be a sacred secret. She needs to have sex as soon as possible so that they can cover up who the baby belongs to. You know, like the story of David and Bathsheba. Do you see how abominable these Mormons are? It gets worse. We're bringing back the old practices. And so when these Danites, who are swapping their wives, who are raping the new converts into the church, then start the war to get Joseph out of the way, they're going to the real true Mormons, the wheat, and saying, Joseph Smith is the leader of the band, you need to join. By the way, we're practicing polygamy. Your wife is now mine. Your daughters are now mine. We spiritually need to have sex. Because that's what we do. And so those Mormons who would not do it had to leave or be murdered. So David Whitmer, yeah, he leaves. Thomas B. Marsh leaves. Notice how they would frame and blame Thomas B. Marsh's, is it Thomas B. Marsh's daughter? And Sidney Rigdon's daughter. I think those two daughters, or it was the wife of Thomas B. Marsh, something like that. I don't memorize, and I'm not doing that video again. I don't have it written down in front of me. There was something about daughter of Sidney Rigdon, I think, that resulted in 1843, or it was 1842, and the other one was 1843, from why the Danites claim that Joseph Smith was practicing polygamy finally in 1843. No. Because Joseph Smith, according to the Danites themselves, because this is a forged document, section 117, is not a part of the Danites. He's not leading it. He's condemning it, and he blames Newell K. Whitney for being a part of it, who would go on to be the bishop at Atonement, the secret headquarters of the Danites, where the war began over the election to determine how to develop the land that the Danites were calling Atonement, section 116, forged document, blatantly obvious, brand new ink, which means 40 years later. And sure enough, published brand new in Brigham Young's 1876 Doctrine and Covenants. And look, oh, section 132 magically appears and is claimed to be from 1843. This 1838. And so Brigham Young was collecting money from these Danites, not just the spoils of war, with Newell K. Whitney as the bishop, called by Brigham Young, not Joseph Smith. Because Joseph Smith's bishop was section 85 with the ledger. This may end up going 3 hours. W. Phelps. This also did not get published until 18... please have it here. Okay, so we gotta go online to look it up. I'm pretty sure it's 1876 also. But we'll check to make sure it wasn't 1844 when section 119 got put in. Which is a major faux pas to put the two bishops in the same edition. '76. Yep. Okay. Yeah, major faux pas. Putting in both 117 of Newell K. Whitney as the bishop and W. Phelps's letter, which is why Joseph Smith didn't publish it in 1835. It was a personal letter. Putting that letter also in at the same time, saying that he's the bishop. Oops! And yes, 85 has to do with the one mighty and strong for the latter days, as Joseph Smith gives him that prophecy. And talks about the ledger for the latter days, which is what I'm hoping will still be happening. What did you do for Thanksgiving? I tried to save your lives for Thanksgiving. I planted a whole bunch of seeds in every single state and territory of the United States of America. Let's see what produces from it. I'm trying everything I can to save your lives. And since it's an hour and 20 minutes in, you're not likely to know if you're the enemy. But we'll see. We'll see how compromised this nation already is. But I'm trying, guys. I'm trying to save you. Shh. If you can't tell of the theme of this video as to what I was doing yesterday, I saw something, I'm saying something. Which is the thing that they don't want you to do. From 1984. If you see something, say something. In Utah, if you see something, say something. I'm saying something from you, leaders. No. You don't look at us. Look down there at your level. Yeah. So we'll see. It has to happen. The fall has to happen. You must be saved. And so I am doing everything I can get inspired to do. And it's extremely tough because this church has conquered the world already. We're just waiting for the fall with Trump, which we know is coming. And yes, notice the sex sins involved with Trump and his cronies. Not a coinkydink. And so Brigham Young requires payment from these Danites, from the Mormons. It's through the secret combination, and thus the war helped perpetuate it, and thus when it started as an underground thing, not kept on books. And 1842 comes along, and the announcement of the temple in Nauvoo to be built is given by Joseph Smith. And so Brigham Young then, with his Danites, says, hey, let's help by collecting the money. They're not the ones to collect the money. They're supposed to go out on missions and convert other people to the Church of the Latter-day Saints. And so now Brigham Young is involved, as you can see it in the ledger that Nelson had rushed out last year before Thanksgiving, which was yesterday, which I did oh my God, it's the anniversary. To prove that Section 119 is true. It's supposed to be from Section 85, the Book of the Law. But the church doesn't want you to connect it to Section 85 because there's too much controversy with that one mighty and strong to set and order the temple and the ledger of those who are worthy to go to Zion and who are not. And that's what I'm hoping to get set up, is that with the fall of the church and the transfer of everything to me so that we can go to Zion, all the bishops around the world will have a ledger of those who want to come to Zion. And that will be sent to me so that when you do get to Zion, I can match it to make sure that you are legitimate to come in, not trying to sneak in. We have to prevent secret combinations from coming in and destroying us. And so, even though there will be those who will want to sneak in anyway, they will be exposed and they will be kicked out. And so there will be no monetary system of economy. So if you come to Zion seeking to overthrow it and you get exposed and kicked out, you're left with nothing now. Good for you. Get out. And so, yes, that will be a motivation not to infiltrate Zion, because you'll have to give away your possessions. I covered the videos. Coming to Zion. Once you get to Zion, you get approved, you get everything you need and want. No money. All you have to do is help supply the storehouses. You know, Malachi, Joseph Smith, Book of Mormon, Bible of Genesis with Joseph and Pharaoh and the dream and storehouses that this church didn't do unless it was profitable for them. Anyway. And so yes, Brigham Young now records pretending that it's for the temple. So in case he gets caught, he can say, oh, we got it for you, Joseph, it's for the temple. Didn't need to. Joseph never found out about it. And so then he's murdered. And so, because of this practice of requiring payment for the temple, Section 119 then comes out from Brigham Young in 1844's Brigham Young Doctrine and Covenants. Nobody else had it. Nobody else knew of it. All of a sudden it appears in 1844 by Brigham Young, claiming to be from 1838. No. And so Section 119 is all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. It's all criminal. Every single line in there involves crimes against all governments, all worldwide. But because Brigham Young put it as Joseph Smith, it's still in there. Whereas John Taylor's polygamy revelations from Jesus are not in our Doctrine and Covenants. And thus, the fundamentalist church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints claim those documents of John Taylor. And this church denies them. Nope, didn't happen, not true. But Lorenzo Snow in St. George gave the sermon of tithing of Section 119. So says the BYU production. Oh my God, hilarious. And so yes, this is why Mormons are required to pay tithing, number 10 in the questions, to go to the temple to be sealed. You have to prostitute your wife. Women in this church have always never been approved of getting an education, getting a career, and going on missions. But women keep insisting. So fine, you can prostitute your husband too. But no, under the millennial reign, all that will be restored, making LDS Church great again. Under Brigham Young's practices. This is what Mormons are not comprehending. You've got Mormons who still stay Mormon, knowing of the faults, because they think that, well, a future president will fix it. No. It's all corrupt, all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. Come on, guys. You're in bondage. You're trying to justify staying in bondage, claiming that it somehow could be true. No. You need to be rescued. And you're not cooperating. You've got Stockholm Syndrome. What movie was that again where he gets it wrong? Oh, God. Because maybe I'll watch that today. When are you going to sell Google Chrome, Google? Now you... Oh, God. Finland, not Sweden. Die Hard. Oh my God. Oh my God. I should have known that. All right. It's Christmas. It's the time for Die Hard. See how my associative mind works? Hilarious. Die Hard it is. A, B, which should be the CD file. Yep. There we go. Marathon for Thanksgiving day after. What is it? This is Black Friday, isn't it? Yep. It's where businesses are no longer in the red, they're in the black. Alrighty. So, what else do we need to cover here? And so, yes, Brigham Young is not only corrupting the temple after Joseph Smith is murdered by Willard Richards and John Taylor, but you have him changing the rituals. He's the one that added the creation and garden story. Of course, he blamed Joseph for giving him authority to do so. No, you're just an apostle, an elder of the 12. You are not the one who can touch the temple. And Mormons still to this day are dumb, pretending to be dumb, apologizing for how it could have happened. No. And thus Brigham Young created the bondage symbol of underwear for Mormons to wear, with the Freemasonry markings, and then incorporating them in Brigham's temple rituals, not Joseph's. You're all wrong. Joseph kept them separate after 1842. You're not paying attention. You're listening to dumbasses who are lying on purpose to protect Brigham Young and his Danites, so that you blame Joseph and not Brigham Young. And thus, that was the whole thing. That under Brigham Young, these Danites are pressuring Mormons. This is Joseph Smith. He approves all of this. And if you are a sensitive snowflake who can't handle it, you're out. They were purging you from the membership. While Joseph is locked up in jail, fleeing for his life, these Danites under Brigham Young were trying to choke the wheat to become tares like them. And so you get these stories that I'm doing for you of Benjamin Franklin Johnson and others who cave and become Danites. This is what they were doing. And they're still doing it to this day. They're pushing the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith, but as Christian. And you have to believe it as Christian, or you get purged from this church as an apostate, anti-Mormon, anti-Christ Korahor. It's the exact same practice. You are not allowed to use science. You are not allowed to use logic to develop truth through seed into fruit, word into the consequences results. The resulting consequences. You have to get the right feeling. Don't produce the fruit. Trust us. Believe us. And they're lying to you. They're all wrong, abominable, and corrupt. And so, yes, this is why when I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, the church went, oh crap, and have been trying to murder me, silence me, and destroy me. And they've done a pretty damn good job. As Mormons become enemies for this church to attack those of us who find out the truth. Thus why the September 6th thing was very damaging to the church. Even though it didn't really reveal the truth, it was just leading to getting exposed of the lies and the cover-ups. That's all September 6th did, was find out the lies and the cover-ups of the Brigham Young Danites. So that if they continued their research, then they would have gone, wait a minute. Oh, that's why Mark Hoffman forged documents. Nope, they weren't that smart. They worked for BYU. And thus why Natasha Helfer as a psychologist. What the hell are you doing using science, girl? Psychology is no place for science. Logical truth. She's out. You can't even mingle them, but she's out. The church is desperately trying to maintain until it is fulfilled. Their plot for 250 years is fulfilled and accomplished. And they get these thorns in their side that keep emerging. Exposing the tithing scandal was from that same process. The CEO of Ensign Peak Advisors, being Mormon, knew the Nielsen guy and thought that he was fully indoctrinated into the church to be trusted with the confidential information of the LLC corporation. And he got involved and went, oh dear God, this is my red line that I will not cross. And so he's out. This is a level of corruption or stupidity, ignorance in the church. That as a Mormon at the base, you have to believe the lie. And if you demonstrate that you believe the lie, you then, as only men, not women, get tested by a promotion up to see if you then can prove yourself stupid at that level. And so on until you finally realize the bigger picture that this church is the church of the great and abominable church of Lucifer. And the plot to overthrow the world. But we're only going to talk about prostitution and sex trafficking, section 119. Because BYU now has people coming from around the world, not just around the United States, to BYU. And you meet somebody, you fall in love, you want to have sex, you can't until you're paid up full tithing to get sealed in the temple. Prostitution and sex trafficking. The church is benefiting off of the money used for the marriage. That has to be exclusively Mormon. You cannot get married to somebody not of the faith in the Mormon temples. And it's not a one-time thing to pay the priest who officiates the wedding, like Christian religions. This church, you specifically are bred Mormon or are converted Mormon to pay the church to get married to breed other Mormons, to perpetuate this cycle. This is a prostitution ring. This is a sex trafficking ring. How did Tim Ballard miss it? Had to bring him up. Had to. This church is full-on criminal, with their temple being used as a house of prostitution and sex trafficking, just as the Greeks began the practice. So yes, this is why you need to be rescued, Mormons. This is why you're in great danger. And you are not seeing it. This is why women in the singles ward are not getting it. And those in the older singles ward, I watched Sleepless in Seattle last night. Oh yeah, that's right. Women in the older singles ward were all quoting that video, video. Because it's easier to get killed by a terrorist than to get married after 40. All the women were quoting it. All of them. All of them. Hilarious. Tiramisu. I don't even know what that is. I should find out. It has to do with the theme, doesn't it? What if she asked me to do it and I don't know? You'll love it. Tiramisu? It says food. What? Food? try tiramisu. Yeah, it's food. What the hell? Is that the joke? They're eating? Anyway. Yeah, dating is too complicated. But yeah, like I said, the Mormon women have been indoctrinated to look for the outward appearance, to ask the questions about how much they can be prostituted for so that they can be an 8-cow woman. Ooh, we gotta put that on. Mahana, you ugly. And so yeah, I have done the pictures about women who want to be higher priced prostitutes for those who would be general authorities. And so yeah, women do not watch my channel. The dominant number of women are the older generation. That's what YouTube tells me. I did the picture, intended to have it put in one of these years. Well, we have an opportunity now to do it. And so, yeah, the more recent one is in the upper left, and then the full lifetime one is at the bottom. And that's where you have the little 18-year-olds who make an appearance pretty much. Though 90 days ago, there were some as a result of conference, I guess. And then 300, or 1 year, I guess, is the one in the lower left. Because of conference, I guess, also. But no, the men dominate watching my channel. Women are so abused in this church that they don't want to be heard from. And when I talk about sexual stuff, women run away and hide. They don't want to hear it because of the abuse that they are involved as victims, and even abusers themselves, as I've been in 2 abusive Mormon marriages. So I know whereof I come from, not just from the dating scene, because the seeds that the church plants in you as tares choke the marriage, choke relationships, ruin them, just destroy them. And the men have to conform and comply and beat their wives into submission. I saw this with my parents. This was back in the days of women obey their husband. And so when mom disagreed with dad, they went into their master bedroom to yell at each other, and at the end, mom had to submit, because dad would pull the temple card. You have to obey me, I'm the presider in the home. She had to obey. She still believed she was right, but she knew she lost automatically. And it never occurred to her, ever, that it was because the church isn't true. She submitted because she believed the church was true. It never occurred to her that the church was the problem in the first place. And so this is the same with other Mormons. It never occurs to Mormons that it's the church that's to blame for everything, because they think it's true. That's why they attack me when I expose this church, because they assume the church has to be true. Nope. All wrong, corrupt, and abominable, out of order. Okay? So the Greek practice of prostitution at the temples with the wrong worship of the covenant paths also were added by Brigham Young. Those are all bondage stuff. You are slaves to this church. You are criminalized. You are told to protect the church from criminal prosecution at all costs in the law of sacrifice. This was all Brigham Young, and he had death to America. And so now it's concealed in the law of consecration for the building up of the kingdom of God on the earth and for the establishment of Zion. What do you think that means? It means coup. Mormons lie and deny about it. They get upset about it. No! Church is true, it's Jesus who's going to do it. Really? Jesus is going to mass murder people and coup governments, and he's true? He's a God of love? Really? And you have Oakes confessing he knows the day and the hour. Leaked to Little Sister Missionary, who recorded him in 2020. Yeah, this church is full on corrupt. Brigham Young even had in his temple rituals the garden scene of Adam and his plural wives, and he wanted them to frolic around naked during that part. But he knew that the sensitive snowflake Mormons, who were converted to the wrong name of the church as they were gathering to Zion, would be too sensitive for nudity. And so he created a bikini so that all the women were frolicking around in bikinis. But the Xena woman, if you've heard about her, you know, oh, she's proof that Joseph Smith raped her. No. Oh, God. Penalty of death if Mormons don't do what they tell them to do. Frame and blame Joseph. Don't talk about how you were passed around by all the Danites. Don't talk about how you got raped by the Danites. Blame Joseph, or you die. This is what they do. But she was allowed to do washings and anointings for blessings of women. And so Brigham Young and his 12 apostles got a front row seat to watch. And if you're too young to remember, yeah, this is why the church is purposely doing this. To weed out all of us old people who know what used to be practiced. You're naked. Naked women being washed and anointed by Xena, given blessings as Brigham Young and his 12 sat and watched. And you all think that the ventilation systems in the Salt Lake Temple were prophesied by Brigham Young for the design for the future ventilation systems. Not for Brigham Young to sit and spy on the nude sessions. But oops, he died. Didn't get to see it into fruition. And that elevator shaft, oh yeah, Brigham Young was so inspired. He knew that there was going to be an elevator put there. No, that was for the guillotines to hang the apostates in the temple so that the federal government doesn't find out about it. There were death penalties, blood oath atonements. You had to be righteous or you were murdered. You allowed the seed of a black man to enter into you? Yep, death to you and the black man. You need to see the bigger picture in the context in which it was framed. Quit apologizing for this church. Regent Street and the Point of the Mountain were not hotels, they were brothels. Orrin Porter Rockwell converted to the Danites and was rewarded for his service in framing and blaming Joseph with a brothel at the point of the mountain, which today Mormons still will not call a brothel. Oh, it was a hotel for the Pony Express. It was a brothel. Because of Brigham Young's polygamy, there were many men who didn't get a wife. And so the apostate women, they can't own property, they can't have a job. Thus, patterned after the temple practice, which was patterned after the Greeks, you went to work at a brothel. See how they all tie in together? Regent Street, yeah, with all the divorces that Brigham Young was having, he needed comfort. All right here at the end at 2 hours where you're no longer listening. I want to go shopping. Armageddon. Saw that one last week, or earlier this week. So, alrighty, that's pretty much it. This is what you need to be saved from. This is why the temple needs to be set in order. And Zion is the temple, in case you didn't know. There will be no rituals, because the rituals were all symbolisms of prophecy and revelation for Zion. So once Zion is built, we're done. We did it. This is the fulfillment of all the prophecies for the rituals and why they were that way. And so your families, when your daughter's old enough, she falls in love with another boy in Zion, and the other family, you guys get to decide how to get the marriage ceremony going. You're in Zion. You're already there. You're in the temple. And so you can have the marriage ceremony the way you want, or how she wants. I'd recommend that. And create the traditions, and the fathers and the mothers all have authority for the sealing. Thus, you guys can do the marriages. You don't need to come to me to get it done, but you can. You will have the authority, all priesthood authority necessary for your families. And then you just let us know so that the couple can then be given an inheritance in Zion to start their family. Whereas nowadays, the finances, it's impossible to start off. That's why the wedding is where you get the gifts to start out your life with. That's where that all comes in. But there won't be any need for that anymore. There won't need to be a dowry. There won't need to be a purchasing of the wife through negotiation, bargaining price for the wife. None of that is needed anymore. No money in Zion. And so, no need for arranged marriages. And I'm just hoping that there will be an equal number of men to women ratio so that we don't have to deal with polygamy. Forced polygamy. Because that's just going to be awful. Yeah, it would be great to have sex with numerous women because of my sexual nature. But growing up, because of Beth, I wanted relationship. You can't have a relationship if you've got numerous wives. It's just impossible to have a relationship with every single one of them. That's what I want. I want a relationship. But this is what the church does, is they dehumanize relationships in the marriage and make it a duty and command to have sex and pay the church for it. So anyway, we'll worry about that if we can get this church fallen. So, alrighty, there you go. 2 hours.